Rajneesh Kumar Gupta, Secretary, GRFDT, Global Research Forum on Diaspora and Transnationalism. Today we have with us Dr. Melisha Tandiwe Myambo. Uh, we would like to take this opportunity to understand her perspective on the issues of diaspora, migration, and transnationalism. Uh, it's hand over to you.
Thank you for taking this time with me. My name is Dr. Melissa Tandiwe Myambo, and I'm a researcher affiliated here in Delhi with the Center for Study of Developing Societies, and also in South Africa in Johannesburg with the University of Witwatersrand, the Center for Indian Studies in Africa. I am here doing a project looking at what I call frontier migration and also within that frontier heritage migration. So I'm looking primarily at people who are leaving more, and this is in quotation marks, more developed economies to come to the emerging market economies of South Africa, India, and China. So countries like South Korea, the US, Germany, France, etc., are losing migrants who are coming to emerging market economies in search of what is my question. So I am happy to talk to you today and talk particularly about the fact that in the Indian case, the Indian government has been very forward-looking by introducing a concept of, first of all, non-resident Indian. Then they also have introduced the concept of overseas citizen of Indian, OCI, and PIO, person of Indian origin. So because of these categories, policy categories, the Indian government has laudably enacted, people from many different countries in the world of Indian heritage, I call them frontier heritage migrants when they're coming from Western countries or more developed economies, can take advantage of these categories and come to India and live and work in India and contribute to India. So there are many American-born, for example, people of Indian descent who are coming to the quote-unquote new India post-liberalization. And people, I've interviewed one lady who was born and raised in Germany, but her parents are from Mumbai. She has moved to India. There are people coming from Europe, United Kingdom, the US, and Canada, people of Indian descent who identify India as their ancestral ethnic homeland. That's why I call them heritage migrants. So I'm very interested in this pattern of migration. But since I'm also based in Southern Africa, I can say that the most people of Indian origin actually live in Durban, in South Africa. So Durban is on, what is that coast? I think it's the east coast, I want to say, of South Africa. I'm getting confused. Maybe it's the other coast. Don't put this in the tape. So let's just say they live in Durban, which is on the Indian Ocean. And that's where the most people of Indian descent outside of India live. So I think that this is also an area that the Indian government might want to expand into, is trying to woo those diasporas. Indian government has been very aggressive since 1980s, since Rajiv Gandhi, and then through 1990s and 2000s, up to the current prime minister, in trying to mobilize the diaspora in the global north, what we call the global north, so the Western countries, the US, UK, etc. But there is a huge Indian diaspora everywhere. I mean, this is one of the areas of wealth for India. I think that there's a diaspora in Malaysia, in Indonesia, in South Africa. So maybe going forward, it might be beneficial to examine those links and put more attention on them also.
Dr. Myambo, you have expertise in the migration issues, and you have lived and researched in many countries like South Africa, Zimbabwe, USA, and these are the countries where like countries like USA, they don't have they have the migrant communities not only from India but also from other parts of the world. Jewish migrants from Israel, from China, and from different parts of Africa as well. While comparing the policies of the different governments in the home countries, uh, do you think like African people, the Organization of African Unity, and even prior to that, African leaders started attracting their diaspora long back. I think in 1910, first time they called for the unity of the African diaspora people. Likewise, the China government started their diasporic policies long ago. Do you think that India is a latecomer in this sense? Because India could start these policies only after late 80s, at the time of Rajiv Gandhi, and more precisely, these policies came after 2003 when the first diaspora policy was adopted by the Atal Behari Vajpayee government. What is your say on this?
Thank you for that question. I think that actually Indian government has been quite uh, ahead of the curve in trying to recruit this diaspora. I think India and China are at the forefront of this. Other smaller countries like Vietnam and have been also very good in this. Although I will say that when Ghana became independent, Ghana in West Africa in 1957, the first president of Ghana had actually been educated in the US. So he did something that I wish more African governments would do, is that he introduced a notion of diasporic citizenship, so that people coming from US of African descent, because there is a big African American population, it's 13% of the US, could actually migrate to Ghana as citizens and become citizens there. And this was from 1957. So I think that that was one of the first instances we've seen of that. But unfortunately now, African governments have not followed through with that enough. So I think that Asia, both East Asia and China and Southeast Asia, India, have been very good in this, have really been forward looking in this. And I wish that African governments would absolutely take advantage of this. In my own research on what I call the frontier heritage migrants, those coming from a more developed economy to a less, I found many African Americans living in South Africa, many Afro-Germans living in South Africa, Afro-British people living in South Africa. And they were coming there because they want to contribute to South Africa. But South African government doesn't make it very easy for them to stay there. And they don't have this notion of diaspora because within South Africa, these are not considered to be people of South Africa, but these people consider themselves to be of African descent. So there's a dichotomy there. And I think that it would benefit South Africa greatly to say, let us have people of African descent and of course, of any descent, European descent, Asian descent, etc. We should never have a racially based policy. I would never endorse that. But I think that there is a particular interest among people of African descent of many countries, and even within Africa, people from my country of Zimbabwe, people from Tanzania, from Nigeria, from Mozambique, who want to come to South Africa. And I think that all countries actually benefit from migration. What is unfortunate is when we see people like Donald Trump in the US, it is unfortunate that there is a trend of xenophobia in the world, across Europe, across the US, across South Africa, against migrants and saying that we don't need migrants. But people who work on the economy and people who understand how migrants contribute to build countries know that every country that receives migrants benefits exponentially from that. So I think that there's a political discourse that is very nativist and anti-immigrant that is emerging right now across the world that is very dangerous, and literally dangerous, that people will suffer from this. And but I cannot say in strong enough terms that this is a misreading of the situation. The U.S. benefits greatly from having Mexicans and other people migrate to it. The U.S. economy could not function without Mexicans and other people who speak Spanish. That is how the economy is functioning. And the same in South Africa. There's many Zimbabweans there, Mozambicans, Nigerians, etc. The economy needs these people. And I think in India also the same thing could be said for Bangladeshi immigrants that Professor Kadria was referencing today. So I think that in general, policy should be forward-looking and not respond to our worst tendencies towards nativism and xenophobia.
In our age, we see two divergent phenomena, in fact. On the one hand, there is a phenomenal growth in the migration, international migration especially. On the other hand, in many parts of the world, the fundamentalist, the upsurge of the fundamentalist people, and especially the emergence of many advocates of the son of soil theory. So there is a conflicting ideas about migration. In this scenario, when your research about the heritage migrants, that's reverse migrants, what impact it will bring in the societies, in the motherlands, what we can say, because those peoples are returning to their motherland, and they're also creating certain problems of adjustments, because they are no more indigenous people in that sense, but instead they are looked as a hybrid. Uh, what are the problems they're creating, and what could be the solution for this?
Thank you. That's two good questions. So first of all, this stream of migrants coming from more developed economies to the less developed, this is a very small number of people. It's hard to get the exact data because governments don't necessarily release this data. But it's a very small migration, but very significant. So in terms of numbers, oftentimes when we study migration, we think that numbers are the most important thing to consider. And they are very important. So it's very important that the biggest migrations in the world right now are rural to urban migrations in China and India. This is hundreds of millions of people. But although the migration stream I'm talking about is very small, it is extremely significant. I mean, if you think about it, I think that in 1900 Indian subcontinent, the population was 234 million. Of that, less than 1% were Europeans, Portuguese and British. But we've seen the effects. We're speaking English here because of the effects of these very small stream of migrants who were again, in colonial times, going from a more developed economy to a less developed. So now we're seeing this stream of migration reemerge. The difference is that in 1900 or 1800, when people were going from Europe to the Americas or Asia or Africa, they were mostly white people. Now we have this new category of people who are born, say, in US, but their parents or grandparents are of Indian descent. So exactly what you said. What will be their effect in the society is something we have to examine and research. Secondly, how will they adjust to the society? Because they have to adjust to the society. But to be honest, we are living in a very globalized world economy. And some people think globalization is a form of colonization and westernization. So the society, in a sense, in a lot of emerging market economies, has also always already adjusted to them. So what I mean by that is that if you are born in California and your grandparents are, say, from the Punjab, you were born in California and you speak English, you come to India, already you're going to encounter many middle-class Indians who are speaking the best English in the world, who are the most fluent in English. I always love that when I come to India. I think Indians have the best English vocabulary in the whole world. So no. I think that, oh my goodness, it's delightful. I hear fantastic English words which I only see in dictionary, and then I see them. I hear people say them here in India. But the point is, because of colonization, already you have an English-speaking population available. So when you come from California, whether you're a white Californian, a Mexican Californian, an African-American Californian, or a person of Indian descent, you already have linguistic capability. We've seen massive changes in the urban scape. So what I mean by that is that in every globalizing city, whether it's Lagos or Johannesburg, Dubai, Delhi, Mumbai, what we're seeing is that there is an emergence of malls. This big propensity to build malls, which we should examine why that is. But if you're coming from the global north and you see a mall is something that you're very used to. So now with globalization, the society already, middle-class society, is very similar around the world. So you can actually have a very similar lifestyle if you have enough money. It's a very class-based statement I'm making here. But middle class and upper middle class people can have similar lifestyle, whether in Los Angeles or Delhi, uh, in New York or in Bombay. So on one hand, if these migrants, say a heritage migrated from California to Calcutta, they might be fine there. But if they go now into the rural region, then they would face more difficulty. Then do they speak Bengali? How well do they speak Bengali? Can they live without electricity or running water? Uh, uh, what will they do without television if you don't have the cell phone? This will be a problem. But urban to urban migration around the world now is much simpler for a certain class of people because the actual spaces that they exist in are now everywhere. They can have Starbucks coffee everywhere. And this is a big change, we're saying, in the migration experience, as well as technology. So people now, because of social media and FaceTime, Skype, WhatsApp, can now stay in touch with family and friends. So they may be feeling out of place here in India, but for the first few months, say, or first, it can take some time to settle in, but they have a support network on their phone. So very different experience, I think.
You mentioned the revolution in information technology and communication technology that is bringing closer heritage migrants to their motherlands. Do you think that it also encourages temporary or seasonal migration in the form of tourism or in the form of the visit to the devotional places, religious places, or pilgrimages? Do you think that this has phenomenal increased because of this as an outcome of the globalization?
I think all forms of travel, both virtual travel and actual travel, have increased because of globalization. So, therefore, I would say yes. And we don't know with these patterns of migration how permanent they are. I don't know if that's still a relevant question to ask in this day and age. Many people are dividing their time between places. When I say that, I mean both seasonal migrants who, come to harvest fields and then go back to their home village. And then on the more, and this is like in quotation marks, I don't agree with this terminology, but more highly skilled migrants also, they're sort of moving around the world. You're an academic. I'm sure that you might go for 1 year fellowship to Britain. You might go then to Germany for 1 year. Maybe you come to South Africa. So people are moving around for career reasons, and so it's hard to talk about permanent migration the same way. What I've discovered in my research so far, in terms of people who move to India or move to South Africa from Western countries or countries like Japan and South Korea, oftentimes they come on a tourism trip, or they come again for some study period, and then they come again. And then the question is, will they keep on coming again, and how long will they stay? So some are staying for some years, but then they might move to a third country altogether and form a new diaspora again, or they might go back to the country that they first came from for some years and then come back again. And it also depends on life stage, where you are. If you're single and young, if you're now married with children, you have to maybe be a bit more sedentary. Are you now getting close to retirement? But people are moving a lot, and they're moving in stages. They don't just move just one day and say, I'm going to go to Italy and just go there and stay there. No, they can look at it on Facebook first and see the pictures. A lot of migrants tell me that they look at India before they come. One lady from Netherlands I interviewed last week told me that she had seen already everything on India because her friends had posted pictures before she came. So many forms of travel now, not just literal travel, but virtual forms of travel.
One thing which is closely related to your personal experiences, in fact, it's a sort of personal questions as well. If you want to reply, otherwise you can deny, always deny. You have traveled three parts of the world: Africa, America, and Asia. In During your course of migration or your stay in all, what are your personal observations with regard to the policies of the government towards the migrant as well as the attitude of the local people? Because many places we see there is always conflict between the indigenous and the migrants people. While migrants want to retain their identities, local people expect the complete assimilation. And somewhere many governments tries to opt for policies that could integrate the migrant communities with the local people without losing their identity. So, in this course, in the three continents, which continents you prefer? I mean, according to how you will rank them. Okay.
I wouldn't dare to do that. I won't rank them. But I'll say that I think that government has a big role to play in determining how migrants are received in different countries. And it's very important that governments play a very proactive role and a positive role in influencing local populations in welcoming migrants and making it easy for migrants. But as I said, it begins at the level where governments unfortunately like to whip up populism and nativism and xenophobia to get elected. And then how can they turn around and help migrants with forward-looking concepts to educate the population about why we need migrants? But all countries need migrants, as I firmly believe that. All the data has shown that longitudinally. I mean, there are studies done on Ireland versus the US. Ireland lost so many migrants in the 18th and 19th centuries, and that benefited the US greatly. So there's a lot of empirical data to support what I'm saying here, that migrant receiving economies and societies actually do better. So knowing this, and government people should know this, obviously they should be educated in these issues. I think it really is an imperative that they try to make it easy for migrants. I mean, in South Africa, there's been xenophobic riots that should never have happened against African migrants from north of the border. This should not happen. And it's really up to government to speak out against that and to make clear to the South African population that no, we need these people here and we want them. Within India, unfortunately, many African migrants suffer a great deal of racism. They can be attacked on the street. It is not a welcoming situation for many African migrants. And this again, the Africans are coming here for education. They're paying university fees. They're coming here. They're given visas by Indian government. So when they come here, I mean, there's been situations where African students have been killed. This cannot be allowed, So I think Indian government must speak out to the population and say we must welcome these people. Unfortunately, Indians are very color conscious, and the darker one is, the worse it's considered to be. This is very this is a kind of thinking that we cannot have in 2016. So I think that in that sense, that's where Indian government could do better for African migrants. Lastly, US, as we've seen, unfortunately, in this year of 2016, with a very vitriolic campaign that has been completely based on an anti-Mexican, anti-Latino immigrant sentiment, is completely unrealistic. 10% of the American population is Mexican. That's 1 in 10 people. That's a lot. And then plus other Spanish-speaking people. I mean, it's a huge portion of the US population who the US needs to function and should be made to feel welcome. But this must come from the top all the way down. I think in the morning session, somebody said something very intelligent, that there's policy, but then there's the actual immigration official at the border whom migrants encounter. These people also have to be educated to say, when this person comes to face you in the counter or at the border post, you should say to them, welcome. First thing you should say is welcome. I hope this answered your question.
What are your future plan with regard to research on these issues? Do you have any, in near future, do you have any plan of the publication or any other dimension of the migration?
Thank you. So for last few years, I was doing a study on this frontier migration of people leaving the West for South Africa. And I wrote a book from that, and hopefully it will come out next year. It's called The American Dream Abroad. And what I'm talking about is the fact that because the conditions of global capitalism have changed, it is now, and global cultural conditions, what I was referencing earlier, have also changed. It is now possible to have the American dream in other countries beyond the US, which has both positive and negative connotations, I should say. So it's not necessarily only a positive story. But many migrants are middle class professionals are having a very difficult time in Europe and America and the UK. They're having a difficult time making ends meet because those economies are stagnant at best or growing very slowly. So a lot of people are looking for opportunity in South Africa, China, India, and other emerging market economies. But that research project has finished now, the South African one, and I've just begun the Indian one. So I am very fortunate that I have a scholarship from the Indian government and US government that's enabled me to spend time here in India and try to get to the bottom of this migration pattern in India. So I've been very lucky that I have gone to Bangalore and Delhi and Mumbai to interview people who have left those countries, the more developed quote unquote economies. So I've been interviewing a lot of people from US, UK, Netherlands, France, Germany, South Korea, Japan, etc. And they've been explaining to me why they have chosen to come to India and live and work here. So I'm hoping that, yes, to finish that data collection soon. And I've already begun data analysis. It's very interesting. So why they've come to India and what they're doing here and how they're living here. It's so interesting.
Okay. How you look the GRFDT's initiatives, and will you suggest something to us to improve, to do more research and grow faster, in fact?
Uh, I think that we always need more research, and we always should have more growth in this kind of forum because this is an issue that's going to continue on for the 21st century. So I think in the 21st century we're going to be looking at migration patterns of diaspora and re-diasporization. Such a difficult word to pronounce. Diaspora, re-diasporization. I can't even say that word. And third country diasporas. And I mean, people are moving around at an unprecedented rate. So we have to develop new concepts and new theories to understand why and how they're moving and how they're being received and how they're living in their new places and also how long they're going to stay there. Because of everything we've said, it's a very unsettled world. There's this simultaneous media that allows us to be in touch with our loved ones and the cultural artifacts that we care about. If there's a TV show that you like in your home country of South Korea, you can get that on YouTube now. So this is a new world. So people have different definitions of home, and they have different ways of making their identity, choosing where they would like to contribute to the economy. Always ask people where do they pay their taxes, because people are oftentimes spending temporary times, are sojourning, as we say. So going for a short time to different places, but then you should always ask somebody, where do you pay your taxes? Actually, where do you vote? So all these questions are I think in flux now for the percentage of people who migrate, which is a very important part of the world population.
My questions are over. Do you want to say something on any other issues?
I think I've said a lot. And I think you asked very good questions, and I appreciate the chance to talk with you. And I'm so glad we're having this conference. I'm looking forward to all the papers. So thank you for organizing this conference, to you and the other organizers. And yes, we're happy to be here.
Thank you very much, in fact, for coming here and contributing a lot, in fact, and giving us enough food for thought. Thank you very much.